Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So after I uploaded my video about the current state of the game, at the very least competitive PvP game, that actually sparked a handful of threads, and there were some very good discussions in them. And this time around, Kabam actually responded, so we can go over his response to the thread, and let's see what he has to say in regards of the OP champions on defense and the current situation. So let's just first read it out and then comment on it a little bit to see, where we stand or where we differ with Kabam Mike. So, hey OP, I agree on some of these things. We are aware that we have been going a little hard on the 5 out of 5 defenders lately and do plan to tone it down in the future. Unfortunately, we had some catching up to do with the attackers we have released over the years without any defenders to match, especially in certain classes. Now this, again, I do not necessarily... I suppose that's a subjective thing, but defense has always existed. I can agree that the game does need more defenders. Obviously, it does. But I think it's more to do with, the way they implemented these defenders and the way they just kind of overrun. Because again, with Kabam, often it is like it's either drought or a storm. Basically, when it rains, it pours, and when it doesn't, there's nothing happening. And it's largely due to spacing issue. Like if all of these champions were released with like a month or two gaps in between them as defenders, I don't think there would have been as big of a fall on the players. Defenders are important addition to the game. It may seem out of touch with what the average player wants, but ask any game dev and they will tell you more often than not what the player wants, and what their game needs is usually wildly different. And here, I think we have the biggest disconnect, because he uses like a diminutive language of what an average player wants, but what they have done is pretty much what nobody, or what almost nobody wants. And that has nothing to do with average players. I have seen more skilled players just give up recently than ever. And they clearly overestimated, what they can get away with in terms of defenders to be released. And it has nothing to do with the average player. The average player was perfectly happy and fine without any new defenders being released at all, or like one in a year or two in a year. These tough defenders are definitely not aimed or targeted for average players, but they are meant to kind of like slow down and halt, the top players, which they have done, except the difference is that in combination with the difficult metas, in combination with the game issues, they are forcing the best players to take a step back and quit, not the average players. And also, what the game wants and what the game needs is usually wildly different. While in certain aspects, I can completely agree with that, like game economy. Like, all of us want more 7 stars and rank up materials and stuff like that. But we rationally can all understand that game economy is something to be managed, and we can't get everything what we want. That is absolutely fine and correct. But ultimately, like anything Kabam does, gets judged by the player base. And if the player base is, to the point where they are leaving and giving up the game, then that by definition is not what the game needs. It's very simple. This is like, it is such a broad and shallow sentence, and it means absolutely nothing, and it's fundamentally wrong. Because again, if Kabam did what the game needs, the game would be in a better place right now. Is the game in a better place right now than it was, let's say, 4 or 5 months ago? No, it's not. Absolutely not. 4 or 5 months ago, we had just released Necropolis. People were hyped. People were jumping into content. Road to the Crypt was going hard. Everybody was enjoying themselves. And now, they have nerfed the revives, the AI issues have, become even worse. The input issues have become even worse. There are far many, crazy tough defenders. And that is absolutely not what the game needed. That is the road of destruction of the game. Like right now, with the Alliance War season, we are expecting probably the least, played Alliance War season ever. That's not what the game needed. It's not what Alliance Wars needed. It's what Kabam thought they can get away with. But they clearly made a massive oversight. It's a mistake. So again, I just think he's flat wrong. I just think these are very superficial, surface level answers that are fundamentally wrong. Internally, and looking forward over the last month or so, we have already adjusted some plans for number of upcoming champions so that they weren't as strong on defense. This isn't to say there won't be any 5 out of 5 defenders coming your way in the future, but you can expect fewer than what you have seen in the last 3 months. I mean, obviously we should expect fewer because it's unsustainable. Like 4 months, 5 months of these, extremely frustrating defenders already have done a number on the game. If Kabam didn't reduce it, that would be pretty much it. And therefore, from this post, what you can gather, number one is, it's good to know that they're going to be releasing somewhat less of defenders. On the other hand, that should have already kind of been self-explanatory, because had they kept on this course, the game wouldn't be doing too well. But what worries me out of here is the superficial surface level. It's not necessarily about 5 out of 5 defenders. You can release 5 out of 5 defenders without that defender being bullseye and you just, randomly losing health. And you can release 5 out of 5 defenders without them, switching off your willpower and dexterity masteries and stuff like that. It's also how you get to that 5 out of 5 defensive rating. You can make champions tankier. You can make, some other abilities. But you don't need to, impose some bullshit mechanics that completely disable, new masters. Imagine you being a relatively new player, you just unlock willpower and you just, you're utilizing your dexterity and whatnot. And then all of a sudden Kabam goes like, here's, photon, dust, bullseye for you to go up against. And all those masteries are just invalidated and you're just getting wrecked. Again, I don't want to rip in this response too much, but it generally feels very shallow, like disconnected. And somebody asked me yesterday, what is my least favorite thing about MCOC right now? And my answer was relatively broad, but it's the fact that Kabam doesn't get it. Like 9-10 years, like however long this game has been out already, you'd think Kabam has a better grasp on where community is, what community enjoys, what, you will cause less backlash. And coming up with the current defensive alliance war tactic, especially in its first iteration, but even right now and starting the season that way, unforgivable. It's not something that should happen in a game that has such a long history. By this time, Kabam should have, had some idea where the player base is. And it just seems that they don't. And these type of answers kind of, add to that. Not necessarily that it's 5 out of 5 defenders or their defensive rating, it's how they get there and how it is to go up against them. The fact that they thought that they can release that many defenders and everything's going to be peachy, it just shows a disconnect. Just like this answer kind of does. Now, ultimately, again, I do hope Kabam makes adjustments. I do hope Kabam puts one little 3-letter word on a whiteboard and then runs everything through that word. And that is fun. Whether the game feels fun. The game can be hard and fun. The game can be competitive and fun. There can be very tough challenges, but they have to be fun. And I think that ultimately is what Kabam absolutely has lost over the course of, last year or so. The game does feel bloated, and most importantly, does not feel as fun anymore. Because, eating unblockable special attacks to the face day in and day out is not fun. Losing half of your health just because you're, dexing bullseyes level 1 or something, it's not fun. And that is absolutely what I think Kabam should, keep in mind whenever they are designing a new champion, defender or attacker, whether the champion feels fun. Even offensively, like we had Luke Cage buff, and it took everything fun about old Luke Cage kit and got rid of it. Right, I'm not saying that Luke Cage is not better now than he was. He absolutely is a better champion. Is he more fun to play now? Absolutely not. Because you took away his stun chain, you made it necessary to throw in your heavy attacks much more often, and there's much more timer watching, and it just feels like much bigger of a chore to use Luke Cage right now. Versus previously, he was an outdated champion for sure, but when there were some node interactions or some monthly event quest things that, he was good for, he was fun to use because it was kind of cheesy, it was interesting, there wasn't a guaranteed stun, but there was that indestructible to save you, and it felt fun, it felt exciting. And now it just doesn't. And I think that goes for quite few champions that are getting released, quite few content that's getting released. And it just does not feel as fun anymore because it's being micromanaged. It kind of feels more cold and clinical in a sense. Anyways, that's what I think. So, less defenders in near future, good, that's fine. But that answer did not kind of alleviate my worries for the most part. Yeah, let me know what you guys think about all of this, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about